spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
And we're off. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the show. Welcome to the program. Thank you so much for being with us. What is today? Thursday. And we cannot do the program without you listening. We really appreciate it. The telephone number, 870-275-9799, broadcasting up at facebook.com/Conduit News, as well as our YouTube channel, as well as conduitnews.com. So we appreciate it. Now, we have a great show for you. An hour from now,
to put
well, what do we got
the
here?
fire that caused
All right, so about an hour from now, we will be talking with Hannah Webb Howard, who was a guest host on this program, I guess a couple of weeks ago when I was on vacation. She did a fantastic job. Matter of fact, over the last couple of days, I've been listening to a few interviews that she did, a great small business spotlight, as well as a really, really interesting conversation that she had with a relative of hers, who went through college and everything else and went to Liberty University. I thought that was really, really powerful. That was actually my favorite. Anyway, we've got her, just kind of going to have her on, talk a little bit out, maybe kind of a debriefing, if you will. I mean, hosting a talk radio program, I just want to have her on and see what she thought about it. Also, and we'll talk about the news of the day, I'm sure. Also, we've got Washington County Justice of the Peace, Patrick Deakins. He's going to be on at 7:33 this morning. There is some very interesting things going on in the Washington County government. It's even been described to me as kind of a twilight zone where some Democrats are now acting like Republicans and some Republicans are acting like Democrats. Most of the time it only goes one way, where Republicans act like Democrats. So we'll talk to Patrick Deakins about that coming up at 7:33. We've got a lot of news to get to, though. My goodness. I mean, I didn't even get to talk about this yesterday. It was about John Bolton getting fired. I mean, I might have mentioned it, but I didn't really discuss it further. That's fascinating to me. I tell you what's fascinating to me about this whole John Bolton situation is, did anybody see the Babylon Bee article after John Bolton got fired? It said that he immediately got another job with the Galactic Empire. But then was fired by Darth Vader because he was too trigger happy with the Death Star. Oh, man, it's a really good one. I mean, it really, truly is. But I do find it interesting. Once again, a Trump derangement syndrome is an actual real thing, okay? Because the left was critical of the firing of John Bolton. And yet this is a guy that if you'll remember, George W. Bush appointed John Bolton to the United Nations after the Democrat-controlled Senate went into recess. And this I think it was Democrat. Anyway, the Senate went in recess, let's just say that. And it made everybody furious. The left doesn't like John Bolton. The left has never liked John Bolton because, well, according to some people, I mean, just because of his hawkish tendencies and his propensity to kind of say, look, we can always have regime change and everything else. And yet, the media, because they can't stand the president personally, want to somehow, I don't know, they're on Team John Bolton now, So I found that entire situation incredibly interesting. Matter of fact, so did Tucker Carlson of Fox News. Tucker Carlson, though, actually says that John Bolton is a man of the left. I really, it kind of made me think a little bit. I never thought of it that way, that he's fundamentally a man of the left. But he billed the firing. Tucker Carlson, and this is, people say Tucker Carlson might have been suspended after that El Paso shooting because he said white supremacy is not a problem in America. And then he took a vacation, and people were saying that Tucker Carlson, might have been softly suspended or everything like this. I don't think Tucker Carlson, this is just my gut feeling. I do not think Fox News is going to keep Tucker Carlson on for very much longer. I think that's a tragedy, but if you actually listen to him, he's thinking way too independently. His analysis is way too independently, and he's actually reporting from a standpoint where he tries to focus on the things that we can all agree on, and that is not, I really don't think he is divisive the way, some might say he is. They'll pick and choose here or there. But, I think it was about 6 months ago where, he just makes an incredible amount of sense about really, I think, exposing the oligarchy that kind of pits both sides of this country politically against each other for their own personal gain. And that can be seen in a lot of different ways. But specifically with the El Paso shooting, he talked about how people on the left and the right who are really, really rich, the middle class, they don't want the middle class realize. He made it an economics argument. And it was, and I thought to myself, that may be the real reason. But with statements like this, okay, you can't help but see some of the truth in this, but this is going to infuriate people who are in the establishment who number one, fundamentally think over the last 30 years there's been absolutely nothing wrong with America's foreign policy. Okay, listen to what Tucker Carlson said, quote, about the firing of John Bolton. It is great news for America, especially for the large number of young people who would have been killed in pointless wars if Bolton had stayed on the job. They may not be celebrating tonight, but they should be. Also noting that oil prices have dropped on the news of Bolton's firing, because it means there's a less likely to be another regime change or conflict in the Middle East. Global investors, quote, knew for certain that Bolton planned on launching another Middle Eastern conflict that would inevitably spike energy prices. In his opening monologue, Carlson looked back on his March 2018 interview with John Bolton, recalling that Bolton displayed selective amnesia about the consequences of regime change. The president yesterday in the Oval Office, sitting next to the First Lady, actually talked about how Bolton referenced the Libyan model for, a way to invoke change in a country. Some people say that he wanted a regime change in North Korea, wanted a regime change in Iran, And the guy who has made the most sense of all of this, in my opinion, and I know some people out there are going to disagree, but Rand Paul. Rand Paul has been celebrating this firing of John Bolton. And it's good to have different opinions, but I think it got to the point where, from what I can tell, the president is surrounding himself with foreign policy people that fundamentally don't want to just constantly get our country involved in war after war or regime change after regime, or destabilizing the region. The fact of the matter is, most of these countries, just look, most of these countries are run by strongmen, and if you go and you topple one strongman, the people put another strongman in. It's almost as if they just prefer, this is the type of government that we've always had, and this is the type of government that we'll continue to have, even if you give us the choice. Tucker Carlson went on, quote, if you are wondering why so many progressives are mourning Bolton's firing tonight, it's because Bolton himself fundamentally was a man of the left. Now, see, this is what made me think, because I had never thought of it this way. There was not a human problem John Bolton wasn't totally convinced could be solved with the brute force of government. That's an assumption of the left, not the right. Don't let the mustache fool you. Talking about him promoting Obama's loyalists within the National Security Council. Listen to this. In some ways, the story isn't simply about John Bolton. It's about the countless John Boltons who currently staff the federal bureaucracy. Deeply mediocre lifers drunk on hubris, protected by bulletproof job security. They're more likely to die on the job than be fired, and they know it. As a group, these people have done a lot to make this country poorer, sadder, and more divided. Do you understand? Now, come on. You know when you hear that, whether you're on the left or the right, you hear that. You know that's true, right? There is a lot of truth, and you don't hear that line of thinking hardly anywhere. And it's not for, I'm telling you, I think Fox News, just a gut feeling, I think Fox News is going to be under an incredible amount of pressure to get rid of Tucker Carlson for covering the events of the day in the way he does, like this. Deeply mediocre lifers drunk on hubris, protected by bulletproof job security. They're more likely to die on the job than be fired, and they know it. This is going to, I mean, I'm just telling you, I love these segments. I love them. I mean, they make me think. They go against what you're normally being told, but it's on this mainstream outlet like Fox News, and I'm just telling you, I got this gut feeling, and I don't think, Tucker just needs to keep his head down. That's all. I mean, he just needs to. I hope he keeps. I hope he keeps on. I'm telling you, he's one of the most thought-provoking programs on cable news right now. Is Tucker. So we have this, let's see, this is the AP story. Trump outs hawkish Bolton dissenter on foreign policy. Okay, so let's just talk about this. So there are people, there are progressives, just because they personally hate Trump, that are freaking out, you know. Can you believe he did this? Can you believe he fired someone else? Can you believe he fired John Bolton? It's pretty funny when Trump has drained the swamp so much that they just people are clinging to just familiar faces. They just, even if you were like, served in the Bush administration, oh gosh, we long for those days. I find it fascinating times that we live in, Trump outs hawkish Bolton dissenter of foreign policy. I mean, you've got who would have thought that you would have people on the left just upset or uneasy that there's not the guy. And again, I thought it was the left's position to not be in endless wars. I mean, back when I was, barely politically aware of what was going on, when I was in high school, George W. Bush was the president, and, we shouldn't have been in Iraq. We should go in Iraq. Now we're going into Afghanistan, or whatever the case may be. Like, they used to hate that, right? Remember Code Pink? And now it's, no. Maybe we need a guy in there who's ready to go to war in the Middle East, right? And, listen to this. The fact is, the foreign policy of the United States among those who have been elected as president has been essentially the same for 20, 30 years. I mean, why else do you think Obama went into Libya and did the exact same model that had been done by Republican presidents? I mean, and what did Hillary Clinton famously say about Muammar Gaddafi? We saw, he died, right? And then after that, what did that set up? That set up the September 11th Benghazi terrorist attacks. That's exactly what it set up. Matter of fact, there is a great piece on Breitbart about this very thing. Throw this one up there, 9/11/2012. It was an election year. We all remember we were lied to. Remember, it was all about a video. This is a fascinating article, though. Aaron Klein, if you read anything today, this one, certainly the same players who were involved in shaping the Benghazi lie to the American people in an election year turn out to be the same people involved in getting Americans, or at least half the country, to believe that Donald Trump was a KGB agent. So, Aaron Klein, 7 years after the September 11th, 2012 attacks on the U.S. mission in Benghazi, it is instructive to recall the Obama administration's altering of the now infamous talking points utilized to essentially mislead the American public about the coordinated assault that resulted in the deaths of Ambassador to Libya, Christopher Stevens, and 3 other U.S. citizens. Now, you got to remember, this all came out that they altered talking points because they knew it was terrorism. They knew it was Islamic terrorism immediately. The controversy surrounded the removal of references to terrorism while stressing an obscure anti-Islam film despite knowing it had little to nothing to do with the motivation of the assault. The Obama administration's decision to publicize and even use taxpayer dollars to apologize for the Muhammad film while deceptively blaming it for the attacks likely helped to stir riots across the Islamic world by drawing attention to the previously unknown anti-Muhammad film. Some of the same personalities involved in the Benghazi talking point scandal would later play central roles in the Obama-era intelligence community's controversial investigation into collusion claims between Russia and President Trump's 2016 campaign. The curious tale of the talking points began when U.S. intelligence officials testified behind closed doors in early November 2012 and were asked point-blank whether they had altered the points on which then United Nations Ambassador Susan Rice based her original statements to the public about the Benghazi attacks. Of course, we remember she went out there and lied on all those Sunday talk shows, right? 4 days after Rice went on all those Sunday talk shows, Obama himself was questioned about whether the Benghazi attack was carried out by terrorists. Obama responded, quote, "What we know is that the natural protests that arose because of the outrage over the video were used as an excuse by extremists to see if they can also direct harm to U.S. interests." He was pressed at a town hall event hosted by Univision about whether al-Qaeda was behind the assault, replying, "Well, we don't know yet." It would later emerge the talking points were edited to remove references to terrorism and al-Qaeda in the attacks. Let's see, skipping down, you keep going. Well, here's the bottom line here. The bottom line is Susan Rice was also involved in the unmasking, right? You remember this? In 2016, she was involved in unmasking, these Trump administration officials. And matter of fact, if you skip on down here, it also mentions people like McCabe. It mentions people like John Brennan of the CIA, right? Because remember the CIA operation that was going on in Libya where they went to the mission to try to save. Right? We know about the brave soldiers that died, trying to help and trying to save Chris Stevens, and yet nobody came and gave them assistance. Do you remember all of this? Do we remember what happened in Benghazi in 2012? Same people. Yeah, 13 hours. Yeah, the movie. It is a great movie. Unfortunately, it's not a great movie in terms of it's all based on a true story, All right, we're going to take a break. Let me know what you think. Read this article, though. It's really, really good. Don't go anywhere. This is Conduit News. Back in a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show this morning. We do have a special treat back with us from the organization We Build the Wall. We have Marianne Mendoza is back with us. Marianne, how are you this morning?
I'm great, Paul. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So first off, I want to get to a little news. We got this Democrat lawmaker from Arizona. But how are the efforts right now? How's everything going with the We Build the Wall effort?
We are doing great. As you know, we finished our project in Sunland Park, New Mexico, which ended up being a beautiful piece of border security. Not only, a fence, but also paved roads, lights, sensors, and we are now working on a second and third project, but we need our fellow Americans to keep donating so we can keep pushing forward.
And they can donate, where can they donate? WeBuildTheWall.com?
WeBuildTheWall.us.
Who's next to Zipline?
Me, and I'm really excited about this.
Sir, I'm sorry. The Zipline has a 350-pound weight limit, and frankly, I do not think it would be safe for you.
Oh, that's okay. I self-identify as 180 pounds, so it's cool.
Sir, that doesn't make any sense to me, and I'm afraid we can't let you ride the Zipline. You're too heavy. I'm sorry.
I can't believe this. I thought we had evolved as a society. I thought this was America, but I guess this is just my plight. first slavery and now fat shaming.
Sir, again, I'm really sorry.
You listen to me. If you don't let me ride, not only will I sue this company for discrimination, I will sue you for damages because right now my feelings are so hurt and I feel embarrassed because I'm holding up the line.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Watch it, mister.
Look, okay, I'm sorry. I just don't think it would be safe for you.
You don't understand. I self-identify as skinny. So you have to let me ride the zip line. The Constitution says so. I get to define my own reality.
You know what? Okay, fine. Whatever. Ride the zip line. Mike, let this man ride the zip line.
Thank you. Now watch as my self-identity trumps your bigotry. See you on the other side, racist. Here I go! Doctor, thank goodness. What's the prognosis?
Sir, we've done everything we can, and you only have seconds to live.
No, you cannot say that. I do not self-identify as a dead person.
PHP Parody. Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Eight 870-275-9799 telephone number if you would like to listen to the by the way, I'm sorry, contribute to the conversation. That's 870-275-9799. Little fallout. There, I will just say this. With the defeat of the special election sales tax increase proposal in the city of Jonesboro, I've watched Facebook, and and a lot of people are kind of coming to the conclusion that maybe there was a better way to go about this. Now, some aren't. Some think no, we just need to double down. I understand that. I just say this, man. Like, I think people just need to step back and realize that the people that are around you might just have, they might be pretty conservative folks. You know what I mean? They might be really committed to, studying the pitfalls of bigger, larger government and the benefits of smaller, limited government that, really understands what a responsibility is when taxpayers give money to the government, there may be, and there obviously is, because it was defeated. There are people that don't think that's greedy to want to keep more of their own money. It's not. Why is it greed? This is what Thomas Sowell said. It's fascinating that if you want lower taxes, then sometimes those on the other side will call you greedy. But it's not greedy to try to want to take more of the people's money. That's not greedy at all. We have this weird understanding that somehow government is always serving a higher, more moral or altruistic purpose than the individual can serve by deciding what to do with more of the money that they've kept. And that's not necessarily the case. And, these elected officials and these, people who are in positions of power, and I think you got to take a step back and say, you know what, Craighead County in the 2016 presidential primary voted for Ted Cruz, if memory serves correct. And so everybody else voted for Trump, and Trump won Arkansas. But I found it very interesting. Ted Cruz, say what you want to about him, but his campaign was operating on esoteric concepts about government, not big platitudes, but the Constitution, limited government, better tax policy, and the people around Jonesboro responded to that. Hi, folks.
I'd like to tell you about Conduit for Commerce. Conduit for Commerce is an Arkansas-focused nonprofit organization which receives no government funding. Its core beliefs are economic freedom, individual liberty, and limited government. Conduit for Commerce believes those principles are foundational to all individual freedoms and promotes these principles by educating Arkansans and your elected state officials concerning good government policies that will create a better life for all Arkansans. These traditional conservative values have proven throughout history to lift people from poverty, achieve individual desire, and assist in the pursuit of happiness. Conduit for Commerce operates on the basic belief that these principles and ideals of the American founding are worth conserving and renewing at each generation, especially today. Conduit for Commerce accomplishes this work only through the support and interaction of small businesses as well as individuals. Conduit for Commerce thrives from like-minded Arkansans' participation and partnership. It's only through the support of folks like you that Conduit for Commerce is able to be the conduit to the Arkansas State Capitol. Help us continue as Arkansas's primary small business policy entrepreneur through your financial support. Join us by visiting conduitforcommerce.org. Once you're at the site, click Support Our Cause at the top of your screen. Your one-time or monthly donation will directly impact Conduit for Commerce's mission to promote liberty and economic freedom in Arkansas. Together, we can build a liberty machine. That's conduitforcommerce.org. US, that's right, .us. That's an easy one to remember. I should have remembered it. So I've got this headline here from a website called Common Dreams, and I'm going to show it to the audience right here. Democrat lawmaker warns whether you call it a fence or a wall, Trump is winning on the border. And this is not necessarily a Democrat that is proud of this. It's Representative Raul Grijalva. I think I'm pronouncing that right. They basically, some Democrats are warning their base, say, hey, look, the president's actually getting something accomplished. What are your thoughts?
Well, Raul Grijalva is the cartel congressman, is how he's dubbed in Arizona. He's been in that position for far too long. He does know, that the president is
exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Hello. Hey, I'm actually going to be in Morrilton for the Conway County Republican committee meeting. I'm going to be there tonight at 6 o'clock. I'm going to be doing a presentation of the scorecard from the last legislative session of the committee, and I'm just going to talk with the folks there. Really excited about that. It's always great to mingle and meet with other conservatives. So I'm going to be doing that this evening. Going to be in Morrilton for the Republican County Committee there. Telephone number 870-275-9799 if you would like to contribute to the program. That's 870-275-9799. Let's see here. Looking at some of your comments. We're broadcasting up at facebook.com/conduitnews. Yeah, talking about this Woods on Facebook. We were previously just briefly mentioning, well, we kind of spent a whole segment on John Bolton. Says, let's see here, the pro-war cabal, removal of the old guard. Hey, Joe has a really funny meme about John Bolton that might be our meme of the day, but we're also got a lot of others. By the way, if you've got a meme of the day, you feel free to text us the meme, 870-275-9799, or I'm sorry, a candidate. Or, you send us what you think the meme of the day should be, and maybe we'll get behind it. There's all kinds of funny ones out there. It's it's hilarious to me that this is how conservatives are now communicating complex ideas in the most simplistic form. I mean, it's almost like redefine. Memes could possibly redefine how people want to advertise their products and stuff. I mean, it's really, and why did people start memeing on Facebook? Because people realized that they were being censored on Facebook a long time ago, meaning if you write this, you type out this, right? And we know this is possible at the very least because of Edward Snowden leaking the X key score program. But, so you've got that going on. And then the Facebook is now trying to learn how to read pictures. I think they've already done it. They've realized that they've got software out there that can now read photos. And so, but for a time, people were memeing to get around Facebook. It's pretty interesting. Okay, let's start with, yeah, this is interesting to me. So, Linda Satter, Arkansas Democrat Gazette, monolith, trial judge limits release of tape. This has to do with Senator Jason Rapert. By the way, Senator Rapert is running for the lieutenant governor. He announced a month or so ago. Rapert to testify in lawsuit seeking lid. Now, so Senator Rapert has upset the anti-religious. He's upset the Satanists. He's upset the atheists because he was the sponsor of a bill that put the Ten Commandment statue on the grounds of the Capitol. Senator Rapert's a duly elected member of the Arkansas General Assembly. He drafted the legislation. He passed it through a Senate committee. It then passed with a vote of the people's representatives out of the Senate. It then went over to the House, where it passed out of a House committee, where it also passed out of the full House of Representatives of the state of Arkansas. Then it was signed. It became law that this monument would be there, putting the Ten Commandments on the grounds of the Capitol. That, ladies and gentlemen, is not a violation of the First Amendment. It doesn't violate the Establishment Clause because there's no law of compulsion. There's no one saying that you must go and worship or believe this way, or there's no edict. And by the way, Congress, it says Congress shall make no law establishing a religion. Well, we're the Arkansas General Assembly. We're not Congress, okay? So there's a lot of things. And the Satanic Temple, right, the Satanists, they want, right, because Senator Jason Rapert sponsored this bill, the Ten Commandments, the Satanic Temple people, they want to be able to put a statue of Baphomet. They say, well, we should be able to put a statue of Baphomet there. It's like, okay. You need to go ahead and run for office on a satanic platform and just openly talk about, why you're running. And then you need, if you're lucky enough to get into office on a satanic platform, then you need to go ahead and draft a piece of legislation doing exactly what Senator Rapert did, where it needs to go through the committee process, needs to be voted on, and then they construct a monument. Now, if you just can't compete with your ideas because they're unpopular, and there's still a lot of people that really just don't feel the appeal to openly worship Satan, and they don't really like Baphomet and the half goat, half man, half woman, the statue, and they know what that means. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, sorry, in a democratic republic, your ideas just aren't popular. People don't want to support. They don't openly want to support the single source of evil in this world. I mean, call me crazy, but best of luck. Go live your life. It's only atheists, by the way, and I know in this case they actually do have a worldview. This is you can actually apply this in terms of the people who claim to be Satanists. They are claiming your worldview is being forced on me. Well, how is your worldview not being forced on us if you get what you want? See, it's only because we're talking about spiritual matters, or it's only because we're talking about religion, or talking about this idea that the earth is sandwiched in between heaven and hell. It's only because we're talking about this that people get all sensitive about it, right? But in the case of the Satanists, well, that's the Establishment Clause violation. They're trying to speak this bogus interpretation of the First Amendment. But you can't force your worldview on us, your Christian worldview, your worldview of the Ten Commandments that is the whole basis of Western civilization. You can't force that worldview on me. Well, if we were to not allow Senator Rapert to run for office, to file the bill, to get it passed out of 2 committees and 2 legislative bodies and signed by the governor, if we were not going to do that, well, then we would be allowing the satanic worldview to be forced upon us, would we not? Now, for those of you out there who are following this story, let me actually get into the meat of it real quick. Senator Jason Rapert cannot avoid being giving a videotaped deposition this morning in a federal lawsuit over the Ten Commandments monument he shepherded into existence on the state capitol grounds. But the recording cannot be publicly distributed, a judge said Wednesday. Rapert, a Republican for Conway, is not a defendant in the 2018 lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of the 6-foot-tall monolith, but he didn't initially object to being subpoenaed last month by the original plaintiffs to be deposed at 9:30 a.m. today. In a motion filed Wednesday, however, he asked the judge to quash subsequent subpoenas from a second group of plaintiffs and from an intervener for a videotaped version of the deposition. He also asked her to issue a protective order limiting the possession and use of any such recording, saying attorneys for other parties, including the Satanic Temple, wouldn't agree to limit the recording's dissemination. See, they want this recording so that they can edit it up, they can splice it, and use it in, I'm sure, satanic documentaries or whatever. Without a protective order, quote, there will be nothing preventing them from using it for their purposes, including disseminating it widely on the internet, thereby creating countless opportunities for embarrassing Senator Rapert by cutting and splicing the videotape in as many ways as can be imagined. He called the possibility a near certainty. Well, of course. In response to the motion, the second set of plaintiffs who have initially filed a separate lawsuit challenging the monument said they wanted to make a video recording of the deposition, quote, so that out-of-state counsel can see the deposition to prepare for further proceedings. They objected to any limitations Rapert wanted to impose on the use of the video, saying that would mean that attorneys cannot even show the videotape to our clients. They also noted that Rapert regularly and voluntarily appears in the media and on social media. He is clearly a public figure, and they said the lawsuit involves a matter of public interest. Of course, the judge said, disagreed with that and went ahead and said, I'm going to limit how you're going to be able to use this deposition. Let's see here. Attorneys for the Satanic Temple, which describes itself as an organized religion with a mission to, quote, encourage benevolence and empathy among all people. Well, on this side of, you say that on this side. Isn't that exactly what the devil would say? Hey, man, you surely will not die. I have benevolence and empathy for you. God created you and told you not to eat of the fruit? Come on, man. No. He knows that if you eat from the tree that you will be like God. And he doesn't want that. And so if you eat from it, surely you will not die. Which, by the way, was a lie from the pit of hell, because nobody was dying before original sin. Anyway, they describe, so the Satanic Temple describes themselves as they're on a mission to encourage benevolence and empathy among all people. Again, on this side of it, that's exactly what the devil would say, right? And so you cross over, and then you're led into a cage. Let's see here. Also objected, noting that Rapert is the director of the American History and Heritage Foundation, which donated the monument, and that is a key witness in the case. His deposition testimony is subject to the closest scrutiny. The article in the Gazette goes on. Those attorneys also noted that Rapert is a public official who has announced his intention to run for lieutenant governor, as well as a founding member of the National Association of Christian Lawmakers, whose stated purpose is to establish a more godly nation. Oh, the humanity! They argued, as a public figure who generally and repeatedly interjects himself into the issue of separation of church and state, and specifically interjects himself to this case, Senator Rapert has no expectation of privacy with respect to his deposition. What a bunch of bigots. What a bunch of anti-Christian bigots. What is really under, that's a quote, by the way, from the motion. What is really underneath all of this is there is a growing movement in this country that think that if you are a Christian and want to be a politician, that once you get into office, you need to shut up about your faith. This is why President Barack Obama and the left tried to change the freedom of religion concept, and they started using the phrase freedom of worship. You have the freedom to worship who you want on a Sunday. Wherever you want, as long as it's in between four walls and a roof. But leave that there on Sunday. Do not take that religion onto the sidewalk where people can see it, or on the internet. We will have our minions at Google and Facebook, and they will censor your religion. And by the way, they're doing that. Twitter, Facebook, all these things, they're censoring religious organizations for putting Bible verses out. This is all happening right now. Can you imagine? I mean, can I ask a question? 50 years ago, if this was a thing that was actually going on and the Satanic Temple was an organization, do you think mainstream media outlets would be giving them legitimacy in their reporting? Now, I know the press today is going to be like, well, we have to be unbiased. They're a religious organization, too, worshiping worshiping Lucifer. I get it, but I think 50 years ago, something like this, I think the media would be so biased against the Satanic Temple. Like, this article would not read the same way at all. At all, you know? It might not even be written about, right? 50, 60 years ago, I think you'd have more judges that would just, I mean, get out of here, man. You know, people, it's just a thought, you know. I think people might just be like, what? There'd be massive protests, you know. There'd be massive amounts of people essentially, expressing their public disgust that we're even giving the Satanic Temple any kind of standing in the court of law. Now, I'm not saying that that's the right. I'm just saying something. I mean, you know, culturally, I just think about, like, if you took this case right now, and you dropped it, say, into, 1944 when the troops were home, and I just think about my grandfather, coming back from World War II, coming back from the Pacific Theater, and you know what I mean? Like, what? Okay, all right. We may need to make a trip to, this courtroom. I think a lot of people would. Anyway, let me see here. What else do we have in this article? Also weighed in Wednesday was the Attorney General's office, which is representing the sole named defendant, Arkansas Secretary of State John Thurston. The attorneys for the state supported Rapert's request, arguing that the Satanic Temple has a history of engaging in criminal and harassing behavior directed at third parties, and Rapert in particular. And they said this makes Rapert's request well-founded. In an order also issued Wednesday, U.S. District Judge Christine Baker, who is scheduled to preside over a trial of the merits of the case, said the deposition will proceed and will be videotaped. However, she said the original recording must be immediately turned over to the first group of plaintiffs who sought the deposition, who, quote, shall be responsible for maintaining the confidentiality of the video recording, meaning you can't share it with anybody, guys. It is a temporary order, but it was granted. So, what do you guys think? Now, this is a clear. A lot of times I make this worldview argument about. I make it about atheists, because atheists in this country are given a total pass that their unbelief is somehow because they say, well, they think it's more progressive. Their unbelief in a higher power, this idea that nothing somehow created everything, that's thought of as a more intelligent. In the media, you're supposed to be smarter if you believe that somehow nothing created everything. Time, space, corporeal matter, non-corporeal. I mean, that is somehow thought of today as being more progressive, more intelligent, more enlightened. And we, ladies and gentlemen, as a society, wonder why things are so bad. We lift up atheism as somehow being more enlightened. Anyway, normally when I have this conversation about atheists, I point out that they get a pass because their unbelief is somehow not considered a worldview. Christianity, worldview. Don't force your worldview on us. Don't force your biblical worldview on us. Don't force your belief in Jesus Christ, the King of Kings, on us. That's oppressive. But their unbelief, they're believing in something. They're believing that something came. All of this came from nothing. But that's not considered a worldview that oppresses the Christian worldview, or call anything the New Age worldview. Just the people that are like, well, I'm not really religious, but I'm spiritual. By the way, I don't think you're very spiritual. Or just open the Bible. But so that's most of the time how I approach it when we're talking about atheists. But in this case, with the Satanic Temple, who feel oppressed by the Christian worldview expressed in those 10 commandments that, my goodness, it's in every one of our laws today. Don't steal, don't kill. If you do those things, you wind up in court. It certainly is a worldview that's oppressing others. So it's like, if we give up, then how is their argument? See, their arguments fall apart. That's the whole thing. The left they live their lives in many cases just according to double standards. Now, in the case of the Satanic Temple, they're trying to use the government. They're trying to use a phony interpretation of the First Amendment of the Constitution, the Establishment Clause. They're trying to use that to just essentially attack Western civilization. And, we'll see where the lawsuit goes. But it certainly will be interesting. Tell me what you think about all this. Telephone number 870-275-9799. What do you guys think? Surely you don't agree with this idea when the First Amendment says Congress shall make no law establishing a religion. Surely you don't think that the Arkansas General Assembly passing a law to put the 10 Commandments on Capitol grounds is a violation of the Establishment Clause. Surely you don't think that. But let me know if you do. We'll be back in just a moment.
I wanted to remind you that if you miss the daily live broadcast, you can always catch up and listen across our digital platforms on your smartphone or computer. First, you can watch the show on Facebook. Just use your internet browser and type in facebook.com/Conduit News. From there, select videos on the left side of your screen. From there, you can watch the full 2-hour show each day or select specific interviews you want to watch. Another place you can watch the show is on YouTube. Just use your internet browser and type in youtube.com. Then, in the search bar, search for Conduit News. Select the Conduit News page as it appears. While here, be sure to hit the subscribe button and click the little bell to receive notifications when new videos are ready. From YouTube, you can also watch every live show daily and all the interviews I have with guests. More options are available at our website, conduitnews.com. Select Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell tab. From here, you can watch each day's show live or watch old episodes and interviews. You can also catch audio-only versions of the show right here on this page of the website. For audio-only versions of the show, you have some options. For Apple iPhone users, simply use the podcast app and search Conduit News. Subscribe to the podcast and get each hour of the show automatically in your app daily. You can also download the SoundCloud app from your app store and search Conduit News to find our station. Conduit News is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. And now you know. You've got many options to watch what we do, listen to what we do, and find out what government is doing in your name. Learn more at conduitnews.com.
Gaining ground, as are the American people with their projects We Build the Wall do. But we have Angel Dad Steve Ronnebeck, who's actually running on the Republican ticket in the primaries against Rawl, trying to get him out of there. He's very comfortable. A lot of crime and nefarious things go on along that border. He's not very present in his, district. So, we all know he's a socialist. He openly admits that. He's part of the Socialist Party there in D.C. and, has a little clan around him in Congress who, obviously supports the socialist agenda also.
So you were saying, you said Steve Ronnebeck is actually challenging him. Is that correct? Is that what you said?
Yes, he is.
I think that's
he
fantastic.
Needs everybody's support.
Yeah, I mean, we've interviewed Steve on the program, and again, you mentioned he's an angel dad, and you're also an angel.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, some of your comments about this Arkansas story we've been discussing about the Satanic Temple, involved in this lawsuit with Satanic Temple involved in this lawsuit with, Jason Raper, who's not a defendant. They just wanted to, be deposed, if you will. Some of your comments, facebook.com/Conduit News. Kenny Wallace, writing, the Satanic Temple wants to make more propaganda like the documentary Hail Satan. Again, this group describes themselves as like, well, we just want the best for people and humanity and everything else, and everything's going to be fine. And actually, they're probably more like, we just want the best for humanity, and we have empathy for people. Let's see here. We got another one here. I didn't know this. Is this true, Marlene? SCOTUS just passed last week in a 5-4 decision that anyone sworn in on any other platform than the Bible is not officially sworn in. Is that a thing? Joe, can you look that up about just SCOTUS swearing on the Bible? Because I haven't seen that anywhere. Woods, can we lay separation of church and state in a deep grave? It's nowhere in the Constitution. Woods, you are exactly right, sir. The phrase separation of church and state appears nowhere in the document of the Constitution of the United States. It's from a letter of Thomas Jefferson written to the Danbury Baptists. They were actually writing him afraid that the government might interfere with matters of the church. And so Thomas Jefferson says, no, don't you worry. That's not going to happen. We will have separation of church and state. It wasn't meant to protect the government from being influenced by Christians or the church. It was meant to protect the church from ever being influenced by the government. That's a historical fact that is lost on people today. Let's see here. What else do we have? Got all these comments here. I'm having trouble filtering through them all. Anyway, just keep commenting. I'm sorry, we're out of time for the first hour. When we come back, we're going to be talking with Hannah Webb Howard. And then we've got Washington County Justice of the Peace, Patrick Deakins, coming up at 7:33. So got a full hour of guests for you, as well as some more headlines from the state. And don't go anywhere. Back in just a moment.
Broadcasting from the Baker Implement Studios. Baker Implement, serving you with 11 convenient locations. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 1230 AM KBTM Jonesboro.
Hi, folks. I'd like to tell you about Conduit for Commerce. Conduit for Commerce is an Arkansas-focused nonprofit organization which receives no government funding. Its core beliefs are economic freedom, individual liberty, and limited government. Conduit for Commerce believes those principles are foundational to all individual freedoms and promotes these principles by educating Arkansans and your elected state officials concerning good government policies that will create a better life for all Arkansans. These traditional conservative values have proven throughout history to lift people from poverty, achieve individual desire, and assist in the pursuit of happiness. Conduit for Commerce operates on the basic belief that these principles and ideals of the American founding are worth conserving and renewing at each generation, especially today. Conduit for Commerce accomplishes this work only through the support and interaction of small businesses as well as individuals. Conduit for Commerce thrives from like-minded Arkansans' participation and partnership. It's only through the support of folks like you that Conduit for Commerce is able to be the conduit to the Arkansas State Capitol. Help us continue as Arkansas's primary small business policy entrepreneur through your financial support. Join us by visiting conduitforcommerce.org. Once you're at the site, click Support Our Cause at the top of your screen. Your one-time or monthly donation will directly impact Conduit for Commerce's mission to promote liberty and economic freedom in Arkansas. Together, we can build a liberty machine. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Mom, your son was killed by an illegal alien. And, you mentioned that Grijalva is a socialist, and what's frustrating is he's from a border state. Can you talk a little bit about why you think socialists are so comfortable with open borders?
Well, it's the liberal socialist mindset that everybody has a right to go anywhere. Everybody deserves everything for free, and unfortunately, that doesn't work very well, especially for Arizona. Anywhere in this nation, it doesn't work well. I don't know much about him to say why. He's comfortable with that himself. I just know that the things that he's done in southern Arizona, the policies that he has, backed up, totally been against the conservative platform, and it's just, we have too many of the democratic socialist mindset in Arizona. We've got another one down on the southern border. People are trying to encourage me to run against her, and hopefully we've got enough good conservative people who are going to run in this election. I just posted an article the other day about a Muslim who ran in Georgia unopposed, state level, but 100% supports open borders. Wants to have an F rating from the NRA. We've got people like this who are running for Congress, socialists and Muslim people who I really don't think belong in politics, especially when they uphold their ideals in a country, in a free nation.
Well, yeah, it's a lot of times, you start to think some people have such a radical ideology. If they got what they wanted, it would not mean that the Constitution would be the law of the land. And so that is always very concerning. Back to this piece, I do have to point out that this Congressman, Raul Grijalva, he says that the wall is, quote, an intentional symbol of hate and fear, not a security measure. And I have to say, I have seen this for a while now from the left. You've got other leaders that have called the wall an immoral concept. And yet, anytime I talk about building the wall, I try to also mention the human trafficking, the sex trafficking that's going on. So that they want to call the wall immoral and claim the moral high ground when a wall.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
870-275-9799. Hour number 2. Welcome to the program. Okay, so we were just talking about, let's see, we were talking about the Satanic Temple and, their beef with the Arkansas Ten Commandment statue and everything else. We had somebody on Facebook, read your comment, that talked about how in a 5-4 ruling, there was a decision made in the Supreme Court that anyone sworn in on, that you couldn't be sworn on anything other than a Bible. From what I just Googled that real quick. I mean, I hadn't even heard of that. And, there are all these fact-checking websites, But from what I can gather, and again, we spent only 5 minutes on this in the break just because we want to be accurate, it appears that claim originated from a satirical website that had a disclaimer that it was satirical, and then it was reposted other places as well as Facebook, and the disclaimer was never there. So I do not think that is accurate, but again, we only were searching for 5 minutes, and I know something, but I'm pretty sure that I would have heard of it if that had happened, but I could be wrong. I could have missed it, but I don't think that actually occurred. Anyway, we posted that. We went ahead and posted that in the thread as well, so I just don't want to mislead anybody. We want to get to the facts here. So, hey, welcome back to the program. We have, what are we describing Hannah Webb Howard as now? She is a UALR law student and a freelance radio host now. Hannah, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? It's good to be with you.
I'm doing good. Thank you so much. First of all, thank you so much for, giving me a little time off on vacation and hosting and doing a fantastic job as well. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. It was fun and it was a great time and I had a good time, but I think I like being on this side this morning. Much less pressure.
Okay, so things are back to normal, if you will. But so how was it though? I mean, how did you prepare, and was it what you expected? And I mean, because you did a great job. You sounded terrific.
Well, thank you very much. So, and I'm sure you remember this, it's been almost exactly 2 years since I made my radio show debut, if you will, on your show. Mm-hmm. And it's been almost exactly 2 years. That was my senior year of college. And that was the first time I ever had any type of exposure to any kind of media platform at all. And you had me on the show several times after that. And very, very quickly I realized that I really like this thing. And you can call it public speaking, I guess. Of course they can't see my face. But I learned to love public speaking, and I really started to grow over these last 2 years in it. And it's frankly all been because Conduit took an interest in me as a young person with a voice, and then helped foster that skill, if you will. Mm-hmm. So, I completely credit Conduit with taking interest in the young population and then actually following through with that. And so I think, maybe even be able to host is the direct result of that. But preparing for it was really interesting, and I got to meet a lot of interesting people because, of course, I had Senator Bozeman on the show, and then I got to have Conduit's own David Ferguson, and I got to check in with Dan Sullivan.
David won't even come on with me, so I'm very envious. David just...
Yes, I felt very honored.
Go ahead.
I did, and so preparing for this, I got to have several conversations off the record with these people, introducing myself, talking about the show, and everyone was incredibly welcoming and generous to the idea of, hey, I've never done this before. Bear with me. We're going to get through it. And everyone was completely open to that and excited and almost honored, to be my first guest, especially Senator Bozeman. Everyone, I had never interacted with him before the show. And, everyone told me leading up to it, oh, he's, very nice, very generous. He's going to be nothing but gracious. And he truly was. We got to have a little bit of a conversation before and after. And that's nice just as a normal constituent that he represents. Like, hey, this guy is a good, solid dude. And he was very generous and very gracious and understanding and, was willing to talk to me as long as I needed to talk to him and come on the show and make sure that it was great for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a really interesting side to it all. And of course, you were talking about you had to research in between the show to fact check yourself. That was interesting because you can't, preparing for the show, I couldn't just get a quick, oh, here's the headline. Okay, so I believe that. I actually had to dig into the facts. I had to, go to this site and this site and really figure out what happened with each topic that I was going to talk about, which was cool because I got to learn more. But it's a whole new respect for what you do, Paul.
Well, that when I got into this 10 years ago, I did have that gut check moment where I was like, wait a second, I'm going to be communicating to people, and so I've got to make sure that what I report on is, somewhat accurate. I mean, sometimes the facts change, but that can be kind of unnerving. And by the way, Senator Bozeman is a real thoughtful guy, and so I'm really glad that you guys were able to connect and make that happen. I listened to your small business spotlight that you did, which I thought was really, really interesting. His story. I'm talking about the concrete, the gentleman. His name escapes me right now, but that was really good, and to hear him understand what happens when you have maybe liberals in office that make the economy bad. You just got to hold on till something better happens.
Absolutely. So that was Hicks Smith.
Yes.
And so what's interesting about that interview is, of course, my dad owns a small business and has since, not my entire life, but the majority of my seemingly adult life. And so everything that he described, it's a family business. And so I've gone through that on my end, observing, my dad. I remember the start of his business and, to where we are now, on the flip side where hopefully he can retire in a few years. And so I have that interesting perspective as a child going through all that and seeing your family grow and struggle and the successes and the bad times. I've seen it all. And so it was really interesting for me to get to kind of manifest that understanding with him and to talk to somebody even beyond what my dad has experienced during his small business. And now I'm at a time in my life where I'm not necessarily going to start a small business, but several of my friends are in my generation is. And so it was interesting to kind of be that voice between almost somebody who has all this experience that was incredibly successful and then having my perspective and then being able to relay that to everyone, but specifically people my age with, this is how we can do it. And this is the time to do it. We don't have to deal with all the regulations that he did during that period. And so my generation, that's graduating college or didn't go to college and have this opportunity to start a trade, now's the time to do it. And here are these people we can look to as an example of that. So it was really interesting how that all got to piece together for me.
Yeah. And, and that it's a story that is so similar with business owners everywhere. And yet, the government tends to treat business owners as just well, sometimes they just don't think like business owners, and then they come back to them, ask for more taxes, and the politicians are going to be fine; they're going to be okay. But it's the business owners that are actually having to, run their businesses, provide jobs for employees, provide for their families, in what can be a whirlwind of unpredictability. If you've got some politician in it that's going to spend too much money and require future tax increases or whatever the case may be, they truly are the backbone. Now, we're talking with Hannah Webb Howard. She is a UALR law student. She guest hosted the program while I was on vacation for 2 days. And Hannah, your other interview with your cousin, tell us about that. That was really fascinating to hear him articulate just how liberal the Northeast can be, how liberal his high school experience was.
Right. So that interview was incredibly interesting for me because I knew Andrew was a smart dude and that he could articulate himself well, but I had no idea that he was going to be so good at this. So he truly blew me away. He was a natural. So me and Andrew, we are related. We're cousins. And for whatever reason, we didn't meet until we were both in college. And we actually met at Thanksgiving. Of all places to meet your cousin when you're 18, we were at Thanksgiving. But it was great. And we hit it off. And, of course, you're never supposed to talk about politics at Thanksgiving. Well, my family does not do that, mainly because we all agree. And so we can talk about it openly. And so, truly, when I said I think our first conversation was about Trump, I mean it. I think maybe the only thing we talked about all day was politics. And it was so cool for me to find somebody my age from a different part of the country who I could sit here and have the same meaningful conversations and agreed with me. And so, his whole story's cool, of course.
Yes.
And the way that my high school experience wasn't like that. I mean, I genuinely had a neutral experience, and that's probably because of where we live. And everyone does typically agree with each other in Northeast Arkansas. And that's not true, of course, across the board, but as a general matter. And so I didn't experience any of that. And frankly, now that I'm an adult and look back, my high school history teacher, who I credit to teaching me everything I know about history, she was wonderful. She is apparently very liberal, but she never imposed that on us. And, she taught us U.S. history and world history. She never imposed it on us, and I never had any clue that she felt that way until I was an adult. And so my high school experience and his high school experience were totally different.
Mm-hmm.
But our college experiences were also, because it was in college that I was introduced to the very liberal agenda, if you will, and his wasn't. And so it's interesting how we had exact opposite experiences, but have turned out the same way in our young adult life. So it was really cool to get to talk to him, mainly because he was such a good guest, but to really flesh out how different our stories were, but how we all ended up the same.
So let me ask you this, Hannah, as this was one part of the interview that I kind of it's just a question on the generation the generation. So where do you guys fall? You said we tiptoe around being a millennial or being Generation Z. What can you kind of expand on that? Like, what do you mean by that?
So there's various studies, and I actually think me and Joe researched this one day, trying to figure out what are we? Are we millennials? Or are we Generation Z? And it really just depends on the study of where you fall. So I was born in 1995, and a lot of people will say, 90s to 2000s, they're still millennials, but some people will say 95 and up, you're Generation Z. And so I fall somewhere in the middle. I think that I'm probably just my experience, I'm probably considered more of a millennial. I think Generation Z, I think that what people call Generation Z, I would look at and think that they were little kids.
Yeah.
And so personally, I think I'd probably fall in the millennial range. But the thing with that is, of course, the millennials have been labeled the crazy pink hair liberals.
Mm-hmm.
But Generation Z, according to some studies, and I can't quote what study it is, that generation may be more socially liberal, but they're more economically conservative. Mm-hmm. And I will agree with that in my experience, just with my peers. And not that my peers are socially liberal. When I say peers, the people I agree with. And not that they're socially liberal, but just that they think, I don't think the government should tell me to do this. I don't think the government should tell me who I can marry and who I can't. But they're much more economically conservative. And, of course, that's not across the board. That's just kind of the change I see in people who don't identify themselves as liberals, but they don't necessarily identify themselves as, maybe as hardcore conservative as we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just kind of looking at this. The reason I asked is because I'm fascinated with Generation Z. there are people, now you can't find it everywhere, but Generation Z appears to be rejecting the PC culture that millennials have embraced. And they are making millennials, social justice warrior millennials, really angry because Generation Z, they are just starting to tell jokes and be funny, and they really are embracing freedom of speech in a lot of ways. And they're doing this on these, they're different apps. I mean, apps that I don't use and haven't heard of. And then you've got all these influencers and these kids or whatever that are making all this money, but they seem to be embracing freedom of speech more so in the traditional American sense than the millennials who are always offended at the slightest thing. And so I have been following this phenomenon because I think it is one that kind of gives us hope that there are people where now kind of saying what you want to say is now becoming the counterculture. And that's, I think, a positive considering how sensitive the people who are going into positions of power now are, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
I completely agree, and I think it's part of the system correcting itself as the pendulum swings, or however you want to phrase that.
Yeah.
But I do agree with you. I think that we're seeing more of a shift because of course, I still keep up with I'd like to think that I'm still up to date with the cool social media things. I don't know. You really do go downhill when you graduate college. But I would like to think I'm still.
You're in law school, so you're doing a lot of studying. You don't have time for all of this pop culture.
Exactly. So, I like to think that I still keep up with it. And so I do agree that it seems to be shifting. Because, we got to a point in time where you couldn't even make a joke. And, you do meme of the day, and memes are, a phenomenon in my generation. And you couldn't even, have a meme out there that was even remotely funny if it offended any one person, even though the person doesn't mean the joke offensively. Of course somebody's going to be like, oh, you can't post that, you bigot, yada, yada, yada. And so I think that's what got really intense for a long period of time. And I do agree with you that it has, started to slack off maybe a little bit, or maybe people have been a little more like, okay, it's just a joke. No one is discriminating against anyone here. It's just a joke. We're just being funny. Let's laugh. Let's move on with our lives because it's not that big of a deal.
Hannah Webb Howard, UALR student and freelance talk radio host. Hey, thank you so much for being with us this morning. We really appreciate it. And again, thank you for filling in for me while I was gone.
Well, absolutely. I'm happy to do so. Thanks for having me, Paul.
All right. Have a great day, Hannah. Folks, we're going to take a break, going to reset, and we'll be back here in just a moment.
I wanted to remind you that if you miss the daily live broadcast, you can always catch up and listen across our digital platforms on your smartphone or computer. First, you can watch the show on Facebook. Just use your internet browser and type in facebook.com/Conduit News. From there, select videos on the left side of your screen. From there, you can watch the full 2-hour show each day or select specific interviews you want to watch. Another place you can watch the show is on YouTube. Just use your internet browser and type in youtube.com. Then, in the search bar, search for Conduit News. Select the Conduit News page as it appears. While here, be sure to hit the subscribe button and click the little bell to receive notifications when new videos are ready. From YouTube, you can also watch every live show daily and all the interviews I have.
In a world full of constituents with
More
social
options
media
are available
accounts,
at our website.
bloggers just looking to increase their page views, and a talk radio host who generally is just the worst. How are Little Rock's elite supposed to conduct business with such a lack of privacy? Introducing the 1835 Club, older and more refined than other clubs that claim discretion. The 1835 Club is for seasoned political veterans that want to conduct the highest form of aristocratic business with the public's money. Are you a schemer, Do you someday want a guaranteed flow of taxpayer money to support your business? Is it your dream to see the .gov domain at the end of your business website? Don't listen to the imitators. The 1835 Club is the place where corrupt politicians and businessmen hatch their next crony schemes. At the 1835 Club, we make lobbying safe and legal.
Ethics.
Why, of course. All business is done in an ethical manner. Just look for the sign above the door that reads, loophole. Are you tired of the Capitol Police restricting your access to the roof after a perfectly good night of drinking? The 1835 Club has libations and a perfectly good roof. Other crony clubs that promise discretion try to lure you in by advertising bars made out of aeroplanes. Well, at the 1835 Club, instead of an airplane fuselage, we've got a space shuttle. No, not a bar. We've got an actual space shuttle that makes a daily run to the moon so members of the 1835 Club can have some real privacy away from the bloggers and taxpayers. Are you an Arkansas aristocrat? Do you want to be? It's the 1835 Club, and we work tirelessly to make sure the good old boy system remains alive and well. Join today.
Disclaimer. The 1835 Club reserves the right to deny membership to anyone who has principles. Any talk of the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution must be done in jest or, at the very least, with a condescending tone. And finally, the 1835 Club will be given a 25% commission of any agreements made between politicians and the business community.
PHP Parody.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Follow up on the University of Arkansas Fort Smith. There's investigation into a basketball coach. Racism was alleged because of African-American basketball players' hairstyle. Talk business and politics, Tina Alvey Dale. University of Arkansas Fort Smith investigation finds no evidence of race discrimination alleged against basketball coach. So, that kind of puts that to rest. I mean, you can always take something further, sue somebody for anything really. But the chancellor. This was back on the September 2nd. Just wanted to follow up on this. Did we talk about this before I went on vacation, or I think we must have? I didn't see this until this morning, honestly. Informed Chancellor Teresa Riley informed the University of Arkansas Fort Smith community of an allegation of race discrimination had been reported by a former player against the university's head basketball coach. A letter by Mr. and Mrs. Reginald Williams talked about, let's see, dreadlocks as a hairstyle that the basketball coach Jim Boone did not like, and they said, well, that was racist. Quote, when I met Coach for the first time, he made an offensive and racist statement directly to me, I guess about his hair. Speaking of everybody being so sensitive. According to the Post, Williams and his parents met again with Boone to discuss the first meeting. At that time, Boone said, quote, we make it clear that once you get here, you are not going to have your hair a certain way, end quote. The Post noted that because he was a senior, Williams would not be required to change his hair. In the letter, Williams' parents stated the whole hair issue was racist because it is Williams' natural hair. Boone is attempting to enforce grooming policies that disproportionately affect people of color, particularly black people. The investigative report is legally protected as part. In her statement, Riley said that the University of Arkansas Fort Smith Athletics Department will not condone or allow policy, procedure, or practice conveyed verbally or in writing to dictate that hairstyles and hair lengths for its student athletes. She also said she would work to allocate resources to hire a director of campus diversity and inclusion. I will work with members of the University of Arkansas Fort Smith community to create a campus diversity and inclusion committee that will be tasked with the creation of a diversity and inclusion strategic plan, which includes increasing the number of faculty, staff, administrators, and students of color on campus, and I will work with the newly formed Campus Diversity and Inclusion Committee to review and improve policies, procedures, actions, and practices to fortify a more inclusive educational environment. Oh my goodness, it must be exhausting to comply with the ever-changing morality outrage that's happening. Next up, we might as well sue the military for making people shave their heads when they enlist. Anyway, we're going to take a break, and we'll be back in just a moment.
I wanted to remind you that if you miss the daily live broadcast, you can always catch up and listen across our digital platforms on your smartphone or computer. First, you can watch the show on Facebook. Just use your internet browser and type in facebook.com/Conduit News. From there, select videos on the left side of your screen. From there, you can watch the full 2-hour show each day or select specific interviews you want to watch. Another place you can watch the show is on YouTube. Just use your internet browser and type in youtube.com. Then, in the search bar, search for Conduit News. Select the Conduit News page as it appears. While here, be sure to hit the subscribe button and click the little bell to receive notifications when new videos are ready. From YouTube, you can also watch every live show daily and all the interviews I have with guests. More options are available at our website, conduitnews.com. Select Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell tab. From here, you can watch each day's show live or watch old episodes and interviews. You can also catch audio-only versions of the show right here on this page of the website. For audio-only versions of the show, you have some options. For Apple iPhone users, simply use the podcast app and search Conduit News. Subscribe to the podcast and get each hour of the show automatically in your app daily. You can also download the SoundCloud app from your app store and search Conduit News to find our station. Conduit News is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. And now you know. You've got many options to watch what we do, listen to what we do, and find out what government is doing in your name. Learn more at conduitnews.com. Would prevent and disincentivize basically modern-day human slavery. I got to call a foul on that one, Marianne.
I agree with you 100%, and I talk about that a lot, that, they're aiding and abetting modern-day slavery. You're absolutely right. And this, they talk about morals, yet they don't care what's happening to these women and children who are enticed to come to the border. The politicians have made it very, very easy for the cartel to make more money on human smuggling right now than they are on drug trafficking. And the whole picture is what a lot of these liberal Americans who read a headline or listen to a politician say the wall's immoral. They don't look into it any further than that. They just go with what they're told. If they looked at the broad, big picture of what's happening to people, not only American victims, once these bad guys get here, but the victims all along the
Conduit
way.
News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Is my mic on? This is MAGA country. Y'all seen that Chappelle show stand up? He gets that one part where he's talking about Jussie Smollett, which he pronounces Juicy Smollett, the French actor. And he says the fact that Jussie Smollett was actually, quote, fake attacked by Nigerian people makes the story even funnier that he does this accent. This is MAGA country at 3 a.m. in Chicago. All right, sorry. Folks, welcome back to the program. He's a Washington County Justice of the Peace. His name is Patrick Deakins. Patrick, how are you, sir?
I'm good this morning, Paul. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing fantastic. So I have an article in front of me. This is by Tom Sissom, September 11th, yesterday. Justice of the Peace calls for budget without raises and no new employees for Washington County. And this is Justice of the Peace Harbison, I think. So what's going on? What's going on in Washington County?
Well, on your show previously, we've always kind of focused on our jail overcrowding issue, but in general, Washington County has had a budget crunch for many, many years now. And what's happened is, just basically like the jail overcrowding issue, I don't feel like previous courts have taken any action, any corrective action to do that. So we're in a world of hurt now, if that makes sense. Now we got to make up ground for the past 5 or 6 years. So we're just now getting into the budget process for 2020. And at the meeting Tuesday night, this was kind of a surprise to me. I didn't know this was coming out. I hadn't heard it. Ann Harbison, Democrat, been on the court a long time. She comes up with this proposal to not fund any new positions or give anybody raises. So it was, I laughed and said she grabbed that committee steering wheel and gave it a hard right. So, that's promising. It shows that there might be some initiative now and some fortitude to do something with regard to this budget, but you can understand how that's going to impact the government and how much pushback we're going to get on that in terms of just money and the people's raises. So we'll see how it goes. It was a good development in my eyes, I guess I should say.
Okay, yeah, and that's interesting because this Democrat, Justice of the Peace, Ann Harbison, a couple of days ago, she was in the paper for proposing something that was the opposite, that was kind of undercutting a study that you guys had already voted on to study the jail system and what needs to be done going forward. So address that, because you were quoted in the Gazette is saying that it was quote rogue cowboy. By the way, one of my favorite quotes ever from any politician ever.
Well, you can understand that if your representatives are doing their job, Paul, they're going out, they're talking to the different groups, the different interest groups, and the jail overcrowding situation specifically. I've got to talk to the sheriff. I've got to talk to citizen groups that are interested in this justice reform issue and make sure that we're making the best decision overall for Washington County moving forward. So I felt like we had spent a lot of work in the summertime. We had pushed off jail expansion. We killed those ordinances in committee. We've hired this study. We're trying to investigate what's the best course of action to do. So I feel like we're getting some momentum and consensus together. And then she goes off and makes comments that, we should bring back jail expansion. And she's willing to sidestep the jails committee and bring that up. She's the chairman of Budget and Finance, and she was willing to bring that up into Budget and Finance, which to me was just very disrespectful to the rest of our justices. It was very disrespectful to Chairman Johnson, who heads up the Jails and Law Enforcement Committee, and overall, it just continues to wreck this consensus that we might start building to solve one issue, if you can imagine that, So it was very frustrating for me. Sometimes I look at this, and you hope you're taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back, but sometimes it feels like you're taking 1 step forward and 2 back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it was frustrating.
So then, like you said, then the next meeting, so on Tuesday, the same Justice of the Peace, Democrat Ann Harbison, says, hey, we don't need to increase the budget, no raises, no hiring for 2020. So that's actually a positive sign, right? Isn't that what would be the prudent thing to do if there's a budget crunch?
Absolutely. And, I went through the full swing of emotions with her. Sunday I was very frustrated with that. And then come Tuesday night, I respect that she's willing to come out and have this bold plan, this bold initiative of we're not going to spend any more money. We're going to draw a line in the sand, and we're going to stop doing this. And one thing this is probably not good to tell your listeners, Paul, but here's my experience so far in the quorum court. This is the nightmare come true. It is much easier for people to spend other people's money than to take hard and tough decisions within the government. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And I think we see that play out, and we, at least for me, I wish that weren't the case. I kind of in my mind hoped that wasn't the truth, but I think especially with jail expansion and things like that, the easy step for justices to do is to pass a tax increase and just be done with it. That's what they want to do, because that's the easy part. It takes hard work. and it takes standing up to say, no, we're not going to keep growing this budget. We're not going to keep hiring people. We're not going to keep letting government run amok outside of its revenue streams.
Are there Republicans, just your fellow Republican colleagues who are on the Quorum Court, that have just said, maybe we need to look at a tax increase?
Oh my gosh, yeah. So, like I said, Tuesday night's our first. We have budget meetings throughout the year, budget and finance meetings. But Tuesday night was our first dig into the 2020 budget. So we're getting initial numbers. We're looking at summaries, and we're seeing some red ink. And then Harvey Bowman's a longtime Republican justice on that court, and in the meeting, he just says, I don't know, I don't want to do it, but maybe we should just raise sales taxes or property taxes. And I'm just over there floored. You know what I mean? Here's the chairman trying to stand up and take a stand, and then here's someone over there wanting to immediately wave the white flag and roll over. You know what I mean? And so before we even get into the nuts and bolts of this budget, somebody's already saying, this is too much. Let's just pass a tax increase.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it's unbelievable. So.
Well, there's certainly one that's easier than the other,
Absolutely. And, I want to give you guys some background. The hardest one's going to be, I think the meeting was December 22nd of 2018. Last fall, the Quorum Court had punted the football around on the budget. They couldn't come to an agreement, so they had it at the 11th hour, the 22nd of December. There was a step raise passed for the Sheriff's Department's uniformed officers, which was a major raise for those employees. Paul, we all know we love our law enforcement. I wished I could pay the law enforcement like NFL football players. They do so much for us. They put their lives on the line. The unfortunate part was there were 9 lame duck justices on that court during that meeting, and I think they did a very big disservice by passing that onto the people with no revenue or funding stream for it. And so now we have to come back, take care of our uniformed officers, and make sure that we have funding there for this. But that's going to be the big issue with Harbison's plan with no new raises. That step plan all automatically had raises built into it, and if we take any action on that, you can understand that that's going to be very hard for everyone to do.
Yeah, and I mean, there's also a possibility that, coming out and instituting a budget freeze and a hiring freeze going to put the pressure on you guys to go ahead and raise taxes, is it not?
Well, I don't think so. Here's my deal. I would like to see the freeze happen, and because I could be wrong, but we understand that many times in government, the people who are making the spending decisions day to day don't feel the pressures that me and you feel in our individual lives or people feel in their private business lives or things like that. So what I'm kind of hoping is we freeze this budget. We convey to everyone this is a serious problem. We are not going to keep continuing the spending, and then maybe out of that action we can breed some innovation and see more efficiencies, and maybe some people can make some different decisions within their own budgets to help out the county as a whole.
We're talking with Patrick Deakins. He's a Justice of the Peace from Washington County. Now, so if you were joining us in the middle of this conversation, you get the gist. I mean, what he's talking about is a microcosm for, government smaller or larger than this, right? I mean, Patrick, I know you. I know you're conservative. I know you're a limited government guy. You can tell because you're trying your best to, serve the people with the money that you're already getting from taxpayers. But, I mean, has your worldview, so if you go before you were an elected official to now, is your worldview as a conservative just being verified before your eyes?
Absolutely. It's being verified for me, and it's also showing me, once again, the hard work it takes. And it's also showing me we need people to get involved. If you're sitting in your county around the state, Paul, I want to thank you for your show because as I come on and describe our problems that we're having in Washington County, I've had other people from throughout the state reach out to me and say, Patrick, we're having the same problems in Faulkner County. We're having the same problems in Passion County. We're having the same problems here, there. What you've got to do is you've got to get involved. Citizens have got to go to their quorum courts. They've got to be the lobby for their voices on to those people because it does make a difference. Because what happens is when we're down there in those quorum court meetings, we enter a world of government, and we're just surrounded by it. And by its very nature, we're being lobbied to increase these budgets. And we're hearing all the woes about, man, if you cut here, I don't know what we're going to do. This is going to wreck this budget, blah, blah, blah. The best thing I can do is walk around and hear from my constituents. The best thing I can do is go home and look at my family and remember why I'm doing this. And the best thing I can do is hear from people that say, Patrick, you guys are talking about $66 million worth of money. I'm having a hard time buying my medicine. I'm having a hard time putting groceries on the table. I'm having a hard time making it day to day. And then when I hear that, there's no way I pass a tax increase on these people out here in District 5 of Washington County. There's no way I could do that without having done everything I can do to shrink that budget. And so that's why I beg people, get involved, talk to your quorum court members, let them know your thoughts and where you're coming from.
It's fascinating to hear you talk like that, Patrick. What you're describing is when you go into the quorum court meeting, you're walking into a bubble. And as somebody who covers the Arkansas legislature and going to the Marble Palace, it's the exact same thing, all on a much larger scale, being inundated with the people who work for government or stand to benefit from its continued growth, telling the lawmakers to vote to increase budget, to increase spending, to keep this cake, getting bigger and let's bake it bigger and bigger and bigger. And so I think whether you're, a lawmaker going down to Little Rock, or whether you're going into your local county, quorum court meeting, or you're going into your local city council meeting, that phenomenon is consistent. When you go in to actually work for the people, you are now surrounded by government and government interests. And I mean, it's a truth. I think that's why George Washington said government is a necessary evil. I'm speculating here, but I think this phenomenon, this bubble that everyone enters into when you're in representative government at whatever level, is it's hard, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, it's hard, and it's hard to build consensus, and it's hard. And the one thing I'll touch on too, Paul, and this is good to a sense. There's so much skepticism and distrust within our governments at every level now. Unfortunately, we've had too many examples of politicians violating the people's trust or going back on their word with their colleagues. And so I have sensed that if I come up with an action or another JP comes up with an action that we all know is the right thing to do, there's these people that get hung up on what is he trying to do in the background. You know what I mean? Like, what is he has some sort of under-the-table motivation for this piece of legislation or this ordinance. What is his ultimate goal? And unfortunately, that's just not the way it should be. We need to build consensus with one another. And I get into this. In government, we try to divide each other all the time. But when you're out in your neighborhood, we're all people, and we're all just trying to get through our lives, and we're just trying to get through the day-to-day. And that's what we need to bring into government. Work together, find solutions to these problems. And I think there's a lot of room there to do that. And I've experienced that so far.
Justice of the Peace from Washington County, Patrick Deakins. Thank you, sir. Thank you for the update. We'll do it again soon.
I always appreciate it, Paul. Thank you, sir.
All righty. Thank you, folks. We're going to make a smaller video of this on our YouTube channel. Subscribe. Click the little bell to receive notifications. It'll be up later today at Conduit News. And share it with your friends, whether you live in Washington County or not. What a microcosm of everything we're facing at all levels of government. And you hear what he said. Get involved. And that's the truth. Back in just a moment.
I wanted to remind you that if you miss the daily live broadcast, you can always catch up and listen across our digital platforms on your smartphone or computer. First, you can watch the show on Facebook. Just use your internet browser and type in facebook.com/Conduit News. From there, select videos on the left side of your screen. From there, you can watch the full 2-hour show each day or select specific interviews you want to watch. Another place you can watch the show is on YouTube. Just use your internet browser and type in youtube.com. Then, in the search bar, search for Conduit News. Select the Conduit News page as it appears. While here, be sure to hit the subscribe button and click the little bell to receive notifications when new videos are ready. From YouTube, you can also watch every live show daily and all the interviews I have with guests. More options are available at our website, conduitnews.com. Select Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell tab. From here, you can watch each day's show live or watch old episodes and interviews. You can also catch audio-only versions of the show right here on this page of the website. For audio-only versions of the show, you have some options. For Apple iPhone users, simply use the podcast app and search Conduit News. Subscribe to the podcast and get each hour of the show automatically in your app daily. You can also download the SoundCloud app from your app store and search Conduit News to find our station. Conduit News is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. And now you know. You've got many options to watch what we do, listen to what we do, and find out what government is doing in your name. Learn more at conduitnews.com.
And the women and children who, like you said, are sex trafficked. It's sickening, and Americans need to wake up. The wall needs to happen, not only to stop the flow in, but to stop the flow of the criminals who were deported from having them come back over, too.
We're talking with Marianne Mendoza. She's an angel mom. She's from the organization We Build the Wall. You can donate if you want to see private groups, private money try to or continue to build the wall. It's webuildthewall.us. Back to this piece here. I do have to point out that people like this congressman and others are so committed to open borders that they're disagreeing with the Washington Post. So the president comes out and says, we're building the wall. We're building new sections of the wall. The Washington Post comes out and tries to fact check and be like, no, you're not. You're a liar. And then Democrats who are so committed to the open borders agenda, they're now trying to fact check the Washington Post. That's the real story here, I think, and trying to tell their base.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, welcome. Let's see here. I kind of have a little bit of a... Ever get kind of a spidey sense sometimes where you're like, something doesn't kind of feel right? You know what I mean? The Bella Vista stump dump fire. Something does not feel right to me about what's going on with Bella Vista. Let's get to the current news on this. I have two articles, one from September 4th and the other from September 4th. So let's see here. This is from 4029 News. Who pays for the stump dump fire? Bella Vista Property Owners Association members might have to. This from Emma Claybrook. There is now a proposed 2020 Bella Vista Property Owners Association fee increase could have people in Bella Vista covering the costs of putting out the stump dump fire. Homeowners covered by the Bella Vista POA would have to pay a $2 stump dump fee every month. Quote, isn't that ridiculous to tax us for something we didn't do? Bella Vista resident Jim Parsons said. We didn't do the stump dump fire. For those of you who don't know, they buried a bunch of stumps underground, and then it caught fire and, continued to burn. It was an underground fire. It was continuing to burn. However, they're saying, now listen to this. This is the key point where my spiders, because I have a memory and I remember covering this. The Property Owners Association spent $4 million to put out the fire that caused problems for many people in Bella Vista, especially those who live off of Trafalgar Road. Bella Vista Property Owner Association Chief Operations Officer Tom Judson said it's important for residents to remember that the POA did not start the fire. Quote, we decided to put it out. It was the right decision to take over the project and get it done. We got it out within 14 days. We did a really good job, but it cost us $4 million. And so now they want to tax people $2, $2 dump fee will be part of a larger fee increase that will total $11 a month if you're living in Bella Vista. Okay. So Jim Parsons, next headline, is now suing. Parsons files lawsuit against the former business owner regarding the stump dump fire. Because, whoever did this should be responsible to pay to put it out. A Bella Vista resident is filing a lawsuit Wednesday against the former owner of Blue Mountain Storage, the site where the stump dump fire was burning in Bella Vista for nearly a year. There are people responsible for this, and we need to get them to pay. To date, none of this has been done, and so far, all that's been done is those of us who had nothing to do with it. We've had to pay, and it's just wrong. Tom Fredericks owned Blue Mountain Storage, and the land where the stump dump was where it was on Trafalgar Road for around, 15 years, but he sold it in 2015. Quote, I didn't do anything. I sold it 4 years before somebody started that fire, and they are trying to blame me for it. So you got another guy saying, I already sold the land. I didn't do the stump dump fire. Okay, here's why this doesn't make any sense to me. I remember the Arkansas legislature. It was a huge deal. People were freaking out. Environmentalists everywhere were having nightmares daily about the Bella Vista underground stump dump fire. And of course, politicians were in session, and they certainly didn't want to be, well, you guys are not for the environment and everything else. So they gave the Department of Environmental Quality authority to spend $20 million for the current fiscal year to fight a stump dump fire. This from the Arkansas Democrat Gazette back in March of this year. There was a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Environmental Quality. It was approved by a vote of 96-0. The appropriation had already been approved by the Senate. The hope is the state will get federal funds and other funds to help pay for the fire cleanup. In addition to state funds, Tom Cotton has asked the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency for $15 million to fight the underground fire, which has been burning since July. Governor Hutchinson estimated that the total cost to put out the fire and clean up the site could range from $21 to $39 million. And the Bella Vista Property Owners Association put it out for $4 million. And the Department of Environmental Quality didn't end up spending any of the money on the Bella Vista fire. I mean, at least I found an article, and that's what it said. Let's see, do we have this other article? Throw this other article up there, Joe. Let's see here. Where did it go? I had it in front of me, but I can't seem to find it now. It was an Arkansas Democrat Gazette article. We've got this one here. Let's see. No, not that one. It's a Gazette article and House Okays funds. Okay, now the next one. Is there another one? Yeah. Group to get bill for blaze at dump. So this is back. So that was in March saying, we're taking care of the fire. It's going to cost $30 million. And then it didn't take May the 4th, group to get bill for blaze at dump. Association Okays Bella Vista plan. So scroll down here and throw this up on the screen. If you can. Yeah, sorry, we were getting ready for the meme of the day, which we do need to do in the next minute. But I just do want to, this is why something just doesn't seem right here. The Bella Vista Property Owner Association will take over responsibility for paying to extinguish and clean up the underground fire at the former stump dump. The Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality announced Friday the department will maintain inspection duties and provide oversight. So anyway, the legislature acts to do X, and then the Department of Environmental Quality has the spending authority, but then doesn't use it, and instead it only costs $4 million, and now the citizens are going to have to pay the tax if they don't find whoever's responsible for starting the fire. I don't know, man. Something, I don't know. I can't put my finger on it. Something just seems kind of strange to me. What do you guys think? 870-275-9799. Okay, now, meme of the day. Let's go. I was never familiar with the cartoon Arthur. Joe was, because Joe's a big millennial. Apparently, it's a PBS cartoon, but this is a meme courtesy of 4_touchdowns, and this is Arthur clenching his fist like this at his side, clenching his fist like, just keep it in the fist and don't let the rest of your body show how frustrated you are. And it says that this picture is a representative of the media realizing that it now has to defend former National Security Advisor John Bolton, a man they have for decades despised. We'll post it up at Conduit News, Facebook, and Twitter. Arkansas, tomorrow, is Johnny Cash Friday, so we'll see you for that. Also, I'm going to be in Morrilton tonight at 6 o'clock to the Republican, the Conway County Republicans. Look forward to seeing you there. We're going to be talking about the legislative session, the scorecard from Conduit for Commerce, and much, much more. Look forward to it. Folks, Arkansas, be safe.